Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel mourns the death of the Israeli leader Shimon Peres. The Holy Land prepares for the Jewish New Year, and ILTV takes a hard look at the legacy of the late 9th president. I'm Natasha Kirchak here with the latest news in Israel. Israel is heartbroken over the loss of the beloved former Israeli president Shimon Peres. Peres is known as the last of Israel's founding fathers, and he passed away at around 3 a.m. this morning at the age of 93, surrounded by family and friends.
Today, with deep sorrow, we bid farewell to our beloved father, the 9th president of Israel, Shimon Peres. He was one of the founding fathers of the state of Israel and served our people before we even had a country of our own. He worked tirelessly for Israel from the very first day of the state to the last day of his life.
The former president and prime minister had been fighting for his life after suffering a stroke just 2 weeks ago. Peres was hospitalized at the Sheba Medical Center near Tel Aviv on September 13th and had been under sedation since then, with doctors periodically reporting minor progress in his condition. It wasn't until last night that his condition began to rapidly deteriorate, and those close to him were called in to say their final goodbyes.
Shimon Peres left us without suffering. The wonderful team at the Sheba Medical Center fought for his life with all their might while ensuring he did not experience pain and protecting his dignity. Until the day of the stroke, he was fully fit. 10 months ago, he suffered a minor heart attack, treated at the Sheba Medical Center, and his recovery was astounding.
The news of Peres' death has sent a shockwave through Israel, and both politicians and Israelis alike are mourning the loss of such a powerful leader. Peres has held virtually every senior political office, including 2 stints as prime minister and long terms as foreign defense and finance minister. The elderly statesman worked in Israeli politics for over 7 decades, and while he was long a divisive personality, he became one of Israel's most admired symbols in his later years.
It's a huge passing of an era. He's the last of the people who were around when the state started. Over the years, he didn't get credit, frankly, for all the good things he did. People forget about the fact that he founded Israel Aircraft Industries and represented us incredibly well in the world, was a recipient of the Nobel Prize, was foremost in trying to find a peace agreement with the Palestinians. It'd be very, very difficult to replace what he's done for us and the kind of person he was.
Just moments after Peres passed away, eulogies began pouring in from across the globe. But many of them came from leaders right here in Israel, who feel that they've lost the head of their pack.
We've lost a consummate statesman. We've lost a leader with integrity. He knew exactly how to maneuver in the world. He was a diplomat. He was a peacemaker. He was an innovator. He was incredibly courageous and forward-thinking for someone who was his age, believed in innovation and taking risks, and we've really lost an old-fashioned diplomat.
Shimon Peres was one of Israel's most stubborn and dogged advocates of peace in the Middle East, who simultaneously fortified Israel's strength and security. A band of international leaders will be heading to Israel for the funeral of former Israeli President Shimon Peres on Friday in a bid to express the profound impact the leader has had on the world. Just moments after Peres passed away, eulogies began pouring in from across the globe, but many of them came from leaders right here in Israel who feel that they've lost the head of their pack.
אין אנשים רבים בתולדותינו שתרמו כל כך הרבה למדינת ישראל ולעם ישראל. ואני מבקש להוסיף משהו מזווית אישית. את שמעון פגשתי לראשונה לפני 40 שנה, על סף קברו של אחי יוני. לעולם לא אשכח את יחסו החם כלפיי כלפי אחי עידו וכלפי הוריי, זיכרונם לברכה, ברגעי יגוננו. רק לפני ימים אחדים, מעל במת האו"ם, החלתי לו רפואה שלמה בשם העם כולו. התפללנו כולנו, ורבים בעולם איתנו, ששימון בכוחותיו המיוחדים, במרד שהיה אופייני לו, איכשהו יצליח לצאת מזה, איכשהו יצליח לחזור אלינו. לצערי העמוק, התפילה הזאת לא נענתה. וכעת שימון, יקיר האומה, נפרד מאיתנו. אבל הוא לא נפרד, הוא לעולם לא ייפרד, מליבנו ומזיכרוננו. שמו של שמעון פרס יהיה חקוק לעד בספר התקומה של העם היהודי, כאחד מן המנהיגים הדגולים שקמו למדינת ישראל, וכאחד מן האבות המייסדים שהקימו את מדינת ישראל. יהי זכרו נצור בלב האומה.
Shimon Peres was one of Israel's most stubborn and dogged advocates of peace in the Middle East, who simultaneously fortified Israel's strength and security. Peres was born in Poland in 1923 and moved to Tel Aviv in the 1930s during the time of the British Mandate in Palestine. As a young man, he joined the labor Zionist movement and then the underground Jewish paramilitary force, known as Haganah, that would later become the Israeli Defense Forces. Peres became a close aide to Israel's first ever Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion and was tasked with arming Israel's fledgling military. He also played a major role in the secret development of Israel's nuclear weapons program in the 1960s. With a political career spanning nearly 70 years, Peres's name has become synonymous in Israel with the drive towards peace with its neighbors. Among the many positions Peres has held, he served as both a prime minister and president of Israel, and since leaving the presidency in 2014, he's continued to be quite active in public life, promoting peaceful coexistence through his NGO, the Peres Center for Peace. Some say the height of his career was in 1994 when he won the Nobel Peace Prize with Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin. But Peres continued working tirelessly and long into his old age to look forward towards the next big advancement in humanity. As he always said, "You're as young as your dreams, not as old as your calendar." Former President Peres is survived by his 2 sons and a daughter and the incredibly indebted nation of Israel.
It is a sad morning. Sad morning for all of us. There is not a chapter in the history of the state of Israel in which Shimon did not write or play a part. A man who was a symbol for the great spirit of his people. Shimon made us look far into the future. As one man, he carried a whole nation on the wings of imagination, on the wings of vision. And we loved him. We loved him dearly.
U.S. President Barack Obama is expected to attend the late president's funeral on Friday and has already released an emotional message on behalf of the Israeli leader.
There are few people who we share this world with who change the course of human history, not just through their role in human events, but because they expand our moral imagination and force us to expect more of ourselves. My friend Shimon was one of those people. Shimon was the essence of Israel itself. A light has gone out, but the hope he gave us will burn forever.
Peres worked with every U.S. president since John F. Kennedy, and is viewed as having done more than any other to build the alliance between Israel and the United States, while also fighting for peace.
Our father's legacy has always been the future. Look to tomorrow, he taught us. Build Israel's future with courage and with wisdom, and always continue to strive for peace. We were privileged to have been part of his private family, but today we sense that the entire nation of Israel and the global community mourn this great loss. We share this pain together.
In his 93 years of life, it's fair to say that Shimon Peres saw it all. He was not only a former politician and leader, he was also a cornerstone of Israeli-American relations. U.S. President Richard Nixon used to personally send Peres his books, Ronald Reagan used to compete with him at telling Russian jokes, and Bush Sr. would personally pick up the Israeli leader from the airport. Joining us today in the studio is a former Israeli ambassador to the United States and a close friend of Shimon Peres. Thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So, you know, this is a very sad day for the entire world. You were appointed by Peres to be Israel's ambassador to the United States. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, first of all, yeah, I have known him even before that. You know, he has always been very admired by his staff. He was very personable and, of course, a towering figure, you may say larger than life, a real leader which brought a lot of respect to Israel. I think he was the most respected Israeli abroad, and also an elder statesman. So in that respect, it's a great loss. And you're right, he is the last of this generation of founding fathers of the modern Israel. He was very much involved in every juncture, which was an important one. He is very much responsible for building Israeli military industry, Israeli aviation industry. Of course, Dimona, our nuclear reactor. He's also responsible for that. And during his political time, he not always was a consensus figure. But when he became president, I think probably he was one of the best presidents Israel ever had, and then he knew also how to reach across the aisle and to really unite Israelis from all political persuasions.
No, absolutely. I mean, he was so focused on improving Israel's image worldwide. We always used to say he was kind of like the Queen of England, you know, in the sense that he was the face to Israel.
Right.
You know, Peres was an example for diplomatic relations. What do you think his secret was?
I think, if I can say it in one word, curiosity. He was the most curious person. Everything interested him. Innovation and research and science, whether it's the cosmos or whether it's brain research or nanotechnology, he was always very, very curious. And then he was, I think he didn't see himself as or he did see himself as part and parcel of the Zionist movement and the state of Israel. And he was also, in a way, humble enough to take jobs which were, in a way, smaller for him. After he was already prime minister twice and minister of defense, he agreed to be minister for regional cooperation under Olmert in 2006. But he always wanted to serve. No matter in what capacity, he always wanted to serve.
What's so interesting, you know, I opened my Facebook this morning and I was talking about this with other members of the ILTV team. You just see picture after picture of people posting themselves side by side with Peres. I mean, he was so involved in just, you know, getting out to the people as well. You know, that's probably why he took all these positions, because he wanted to stay so involved. You know, there are a lot of great stories about his relations with U.S. presidents more specifically. Is there any story that you particularly remember?
I remember quite vividly one when I was in Washington, and he came, must have been 2002, 2003, when he was still the foreign minister under Ariel Sharon as prime minister. We had a briefing with the press. So there was one of the prominent reporters, journalists from, I believe it was Washington Post, it was in his hotel, and he asked him very bluntly, Mr. Peres, what would you like your epitaph to be? So Peres looked at him and says, listen, I'm not going anywhere, you can hold your breath, but if I really have to think what to write on my grave tomb, I would say a voyage from Dimona to Oslo. In Dimona, I tried to prevent war. In Oslo, I tried to make peace. And if you think about it, that's really his voyage. From the reactor in Dimona, which really gives us a real strategic deterrent against any of our enemies, to Oslo, where he did try to make peace, but unfortunately, to no avail because there was no partner.
Well, many say that one of his biggest feats, more than just being president and prime minister, was the work that he did to create a nuclear program for Israel, although that does remain very secret. And to this day, we don't know all the information about that.
And by the way, he is the one who really articulated the Israeli policy, nuclear policy, which is Israel will not be the first to introduce nuclear weapon to the Middle East. Now go figure. This is our policy, and this is what is repeated by any Israeli diplomat or politician when asked internationally if we have nuclear weapon. Of course, we do not say not, but we say what he articulated. Israel will not be the first to introduce nuclear weapon to the Middle East.
Absolutely. So now with the U.S. elections ahead of us, there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen with Israeli-American relations. How do you think we can continue Peres's legacy in the future?
By being bipartisanship. By being bipartisan. I mean, he really believed in bipartisanship, and he had the greatest relations with both Republican and Democratic presidents. He had very good relations on the Hill with the Republican Party, with the Democrats in the Senate and in the House. And I think this is the most important thing. When he was asked many times who would be, I think it was during the Bush-Kerry campaign of 2004, he was asked who would be a better president for Israel. And he said, the better president for Israel is the one who will be the best for the United States. And who is the best for the United States is for the American people to decide.
It's a very, very good point. I hope that we can continue to remember Peres's words. I don't think that will be a problem here. He's so loved by everybody. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
We recently reported on how the Israeli Postal Service delivered letters sent to God to the Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City. But now it's time for the world's mail and other notes left at the site by worshippers to be moved to other holy ground for all of eternity. The chief rabbi of the Western Wall and a team of workers respectfully collected the hundreds of thousands of messages from the cracks between the ancient stones. Letters arrive from every corner of the earth, while other messages are personally tucked into the wall by the millions of people who visit Judaism's holiest site every year. The correspondence is often addressed to the Almighty himself, others to our dear Father in heaven, and some are sent to Jesus. Twice a year, the Western Wall staff gently use brooms and wooden sticks to remove them, so as not to harm the treasured perimeter wall, at the site where both biblical temples once stood.
אנחנו מדי שנה, בערב ראש השנה, בערב חג הפסח, מפנים את הפתקים מן הכותל המערבי, לא פותחים אותם, שומרים ומגינים עליהם, שיישארו פתקים סגורים, וקוברים אותם בהר הזיתים.
The rabbi says he's never counted the number of scripted prayers, but claims each time they're collected, it's enough to fill about 100 shopping bags with thousands of notes each. The Jewish tradition of leaving written prayers and pleas has been adopted by members of many faiths, and it's become common to see Christian pilgrims leave their own notes. Nowadays, some are even sent through fax, email, or online to the Western Wall Heritage Foundation, which prints them out for placement on the Temple Mount. After all, here in Israel, the delivery of God's mail is only considered a local shipment to an address that hasn't changed in thousands of years. As the world mourned Shimon Peres, ILTV's Steve Leibovitz sat down with Jerusalem Post columnist Amos Asael to talk about the legacy he's leaving behind.
I think Shimon Peres is the last Mohican of Israel's founding fathers. Not that he was a founding father, but he worked intimately and directly with the founding father, David Ben-Gurion, and he did that for many, many years. And having emerged from that schooling, both politically and diplomatically, he later really left an indelible imprint on Israeli history, having held practically any meaningful position any political system can offer, including finance minister, foreign minister, defense minister, prime minister, and eventually president. And even in his largely ceremonial position as president, he left a very significant imprint because the presidency, as he inherited it, had been damaged because of his predecessor's indictment for various offenses, he took that bruised presidency and really restored it and made it shine. In the course of all this, he also, and happily, emerged as a consensual figure, something he had never previously been. He was always controversial because he was in the thick of things, and in a democracy, the thick of things involves debate and controversy. He was always in the middle of it. As president, he managed to lift himself above the fray and really become consensual, and on top of that, he suddenly emerged, something he probably never planned, as the last testimony of the founding fathers, as I say. And on top of all that, there was the biological aspect, which, because of his age, he really came to be understood by everybody as the collective national grandfather. And he suddenly emerged as a very affable man that everybody loved. And this showed in his last days.
Certainly, while he was still involved in politics and even won the Nobel Peace Prize for his involvement in trying to achieve peace here in Israel, he was not loved by the right of Israel. And yet, while he became president, when he was president, he seemed to rise above that and become everyone's president in Israel, and was even loved by people on the right and the left and throughout the society, wasn't he?
Absolutely. It began, by the way, with the very good rapport that he had as foreign minister for Ariel Sharon. Here you had the two great doyens of the left and the right harmonizing, and this was also showing a new example for the people, that the two great leaders of the previous controversies are suddenly falling in each other's arms in their aging years. And that was also, politically speaking, a reflection of the decline of the utopias with which Israelis used to view the Arab-Israeli conflict. One utopia was Land for Peace, which Peres ended up representing, and one utopia was Greater Israel, which Sharon represented. Both men eventually, in their last years, abandoned their utopias without ever having fully admitted this, but this is what they did in their deeds, and this is what made them harmonize politically, and this is also what partly re-legitimized Shimon Peres in the eyes of his staunchest right-wing rivals.
Finally, let me ask you this about Peres. He is probably the best known, except possibly for Benjamin Netanyahu, the best known Israeli figure. And maybe he's even better known because it's gone over several decades, and he's become friendly with so many world leaders. Do you think that there will be a kind of a major outpouring and attendance at a funeral of Peres?
I'm quite sure there will be. We should remember that he will be recalled, I think, in the context of the 20th century, in one breath with Mikhail Gorbachev and F.W. de Klerk. These three people worked almost at the same time in terms of the moments in which they mattered most. All three made great strategic ideological retreats. Peres from Greater Israel, Gorbachev from communism, and de Klerk from apartheid. And all three ended up politically marginalized. It was part of the price, apparently. Peres is the only one who managed to somehow still salvage respectability and comfort and appeasement from the aftermath of a very, very contentious career.
Amos Asel, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Steve.
TV.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Today we lost one of the most influential leaders in Israeli history, so today's word is moreshet, which means legacy in Hebrew. I had the opportunity to work for Peres while he served as president of Israel, and the experience had a profound impact on my future. I immigrated to Israel just 1 year ago, a decision that took me a long time to come to terms with. I've always loved this country, but as the world changes, young Jews like myself are becoming more and more confused about our identities. What is our connection to the land of Israel? Do we have an obligation to a Jewish state? It can be hard to have conviction about your fundamental beliefs in a world where you're made to feel as if you don't have a right to those beliefs. Shimon Peres was and always has been a shining light in the internal struggle of the Jewish diaspora, and in my struggle to understand myself, he's been steadfast in his conviction that Israel has a right to exist, but that Israel must continue its existence in peace with its neighbors. No matter what political decisions he may have made in the past, this has always been his vision, the overwhelming hope that has given him the strength to lead Israel until the impressive age of 93. I want you to understand, Israel is not just mourning for him, we're mourning for a generation. Peres is more than a politician in my eyes and the eyes of Jewish millennials. He's a founder, the last of the generation that fought and bled to create the state of Israel. Now we must fight to maintain the state that was given to us, that will be given to our children, but we must find a way to do this peacefully. It's our mission. This is a scary path to continue on without a father like Shimon Peres, but we'll always remember his words. The greatest contribution of the Jewish people to the world is dissatisfaction. We're never happy with the way the world is, but we care about how it should be. Ironically, such chronic complaining, which is often acknowledged as wimpy and pessimistic in the United States, is the norm and joy of Israelis nationwide. The Israeli way is the passionate way. Every happening deserves a fervent reaction coated with emotion and zeal. All sentiments are crazed with vigor. Every object of existence merits a passing judgment, and no one is quiet about how they feel. Perhaps this is a reason that Israel continues to progress despite the constant setbacks of surrounding pressures. Complaints reflect inherent issues in the Israeli system. Shimon Peres has been complaining since day one, and with good reason. We will not stop complaining in honor of Peres, the official dissatisfied optimist who has continued to dream for tomorrow. I see my reflection in his shadow, and Israel sees its future in his words and his legacy. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Thursday is expected to be sunny with a high of 85 degrees. The sun should stay out through Thursday with the temperature going up to 86. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.76 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.